They say that every story begins with a spark. Not always with fire, not always with thunder, but with something small, fragile, carried on a breath of air until it takes root in memory. The story of Atlantis begins in this way. Not with explorers returning from the sea, not with kings mapping their domains, but with a voice, the voice of a philosopher, seated in the twilight of Athens, speaking words that even now ripple across centuries. That philosopher was Plato. Close your eyes and allow yourself to drift backward, far backward, to the city of Athens in the 4th century before our common era. The streets are narrow, paved with stones worn smooth by the feet of generations. The air carries the scents of olive oil, fresh bread, and the faint salt of the nearby sea. Merchants call out at the agora, their stalls lined with figs, pottery, and scrolls of imported papyrus. Bronze statues gleam in the sunlight, their faces stern and beautiful, while children dart between columns, laughing, their sandals slapping against the stone. But not far from this bustle, away from the noise of the marketplace, there lies a quiet grove. Olive trees sway gently in the breeze. Cicadas hum lazily in the heat of the afternoon. And here, in this shaded place, stands the academy, the school that Plato founded. It is not a grand building of marble, but a garden of thought. Benches of stone circle beneath the trees. Students sit cross-legged, some with wax tablets upon their laps, others leaning forward, eager to catch the words of their master. It is here that Plato speaks. His voice is calm, deliberate, patient, like water flowing over smooth stones. His white beard frames a face weathered by years of reflection. The students gather close, for he has begun a tale unlike any they have heard before. A tale not of geometry, nor of politics, nor of the soul, but of a lost world, a vanished empire, and a warning hidden within memory. He begins not with himself but with a story that stretches far beyond his own life. Centuries earlier, he tells them, the great lawgiver Solon, an ancestor of Athens, a man of wisdom and renown, had traveled to Egypt. There, in the city of Sais, Solon had spoken with the priests of Neith, a goddess older than time. The priests were men who guarded scrolls and records that reached back millennia further than any Greek memory. They told Solon a tale almost too wondrous, too terrible, to believe. There had once been a mighty power beyond the pillars of Heracles, far across the western sea. This was not a small island, but a continent in itself, greater in size than Libya and Asia combined. Its people were rich, strong, and wise. Story went, from the god Poseidon himself, who had joined with a mortal woman and fathered 10 sons. At the heart of their island rose a citadel, concentric rings of land and water, connected by bridges, lined with docks and towers. There stood the great temple of Poseidon, its walls gleaming, its roof reaching to the sky. Pillars of gold supported a ceiling of ivory. Sculptures of dolphins and horses adorned the halls, while fountains ran with water both hot and cold. It was a city of beauty and strength, a jewel of the earth itself. This was Atlantis. The students shift as they listen. Some stare wide-eyed, drawn into visions of radiant temples and ships gliding across glittering canals. Others frown in thought, wondering if their master speaks truth or parable, history or allegory. But Plato does not hurry. His words fall slowly, like drops of water echoing in a cave. Atlantis, he says, was not content with its riches. Its kings, once noble, grew greedy. Their pride swelled until they sought to conquer the entire world. Armies marched across the sea, ships darkened the horizon, and the island kingdom reached toward the lands of the Mediterranean. And yet, there was resistance. For in those days, Plato continues, Athens herself had stood proud and strong, not the Athens his students knew, scarred by wars with Sparta, but an Athens of deep antiquity, filled with courage and virtue. That ancient Athens rose to meet Atlantis in battle. Against overwhelming odds, the Athenians prevailed, driving back the invaders and preserving the freedom of the known world. But then, the gods judged Atlantis. In a single night and day of misfortune, the island sank. The earth shook, the seas rose, and Atlantis disappeared beneath the waves, swallowed by the ocean's endless depths. Plato's voice grows quiet, almost to a whisper. The garden is still. Only the soft rustle of leaves and the chorus of cicadas remain. His students sit in silence, caught between wonder and unease. Was this history? Was this an allegory? Was their teacher describing a real place, or using a story to warn them of the dangers of hubris, of pride too great for mortals to bear? Plato does not answer. He lets the silence linger. His eyes, calm and distant, seem fixed not on his pupils, but on something beyond them, as though he himself sees the gleaming towers of Atlantis shimmering far across the sea, rising and sinking again in a theater of memory. The students shift, restless in thought. Some scribble upon their tablets, scratching out fragments of the tale. Others simply close their eyes and let the images unfurl, a radiant city, a naval fleet stretching across the horizon, the crash of waves as the sea claims its prize. Atlantis. The name itself lingers in the... Plato has done what all great storytellers do. He has planted a seed. A seed that will outlive empires, that will outlive the stones of Athens itself. For while marble crumbles and bronze weathers to green, stories endure. They drift like smoke across time. They settle into the minds of new generations, reshaped and retold, but never truly lost. And as night begins to fall upon the academy, as lamps are lit and the soft glow of fire flickers against the branches of the olive trees, one cannot help but wonder. Was it all just a dream? Or was it a memory of something real, something buried deep beneath the sea? The cicadas are quiet now. The stars appear overhead. Athens sleeps, but the story of Atlantis has awakened. And it will never again close its eyes. The Island Kingdom. Imagine, if you will, that the story Plato once spoke of has shifted from the quiet garden of Athens into something far greater. As though the veil of time itself is lifted, and we are carried gently, silently, across oceans, far beyond the pillars of Heracles. The sea stretches endlessly, a plain of rolling blue, its waves shining silver beneath the sun. The gulls vanish, the coasts fall away, and all that remains is the horizon, until, suddenly, land appears. Not just land, but a world entirely. There, rising from the waters like a dream carved into the earth, lies Atlantis. A vast island, greater than the kingdoms of Greece, greater even than Libya and Asia combined, or so the story claims. Its mountains stretch toward the clouds, their slopes green with forests of pine and oak. Rivers thread like ribbons of silver across fertile plains, feeding fields of golden grain that sway in the wind. The air is warm and sweet, heavy with the scent of blossoms and salt carried from the sea. As we draw nearer, details sharpen. The coastline curves in bays and harbors, each alive with sails and oars. Ships, sleek and strong, glide through waters cut by masterful canals. Some carry goods, grain, copper, wine, and the mysterious orichalcum, that rarest of metals glowing like fire in the light of the sun. Others carry men, fishermen, merchants, soldiers in gleaming armor. The sea is their road, their lifeblood, and it flows in and out of the island like breath itself. But at the heart of this land lies its crown, the great citadel of Atlantis. It is unlike any city you have known. Imagine concentric rings, circles of earth and water carved with perfect precision, as though shaped not by mortal hands but by the will of gods. 3 great rings of water divide the land, each bridged by passages of stone. From above, it is like looking upon a mandala, a sacred pattern drawn by the earth itself. Within the innermost circle rises the royal city, its towers gleaming in the sun, its temples plated in silver and gold. The temple of Poseidon dominates all. Dolphins and sea gods line the entrance, their eyes seeming almost alive. Within stands a colossal figure of Poseidon himself, driving 6 winged horses, his trident lifted high. Flames of incense curl upward toward the ceiling, mingling with shafts of sunlight that fall from open spaces above. It is not merely a temple, but a world of wonder, a place where the boundary between mortal and divine seems to dissolve. Surrounding this heart are palaces of kings, markets filled with voices, and docks where fleets of ships rest like beasts ready to awaken. The people move through the streets with confidence, clothed in linen and bronze, their jewelry flashing in the light. Children chase one another along marble steps. Priests chant in shaded courtyards, their hymns blending with the hum of the sea. Smiths hammer at glowing metal, sending sparks into the air. Everywhere there is life, motion, and purpose. And presiding over it all are the 10 kings of Atlantis. Plato told us that they were descended from Poseidon himself. Long ago, the god of the sea fell in love with a mortal woman, Plato, and from their union came 10 sons. These sons divided the island into 10 kingdoms, each ruled by a line of kings. Yet though they held separate lands, their loyalty was to one another. They met in the great temple, swearing oaths over a bull's sacrifice to the gods, pledging always to stand united. Their laws, carved into pillars of orichalcum, bound them in justice and in order. For many centuries, these kings were wise. They ruled not with cruelty, but with balance. Their cities flourished, their canals carried trade across the seas, and their temples shone as symbols of devotion. The people of Atlantis enjoyed wealth beyond imagination, but more than wealth, they enjoyed harmony. To live in Atlantis was to live in a world where earth and water, law and power, God and man all seemed to move together, as though tuned to the same great harmony. And yet, beneath the beauty, there lingers something deeper. Listen closely to the rhythm of life in this island kingdom, and you may hear it, the faint echo of desire, the whisper of ambition. For no matter how noble the kings, no matter how balanced their laws, Atlantis was not immune to pride. Its people looked upon their wealth, their fleets, their temples, and thought themselves chosen above all others. The world was vast, and they believed it belonged to them. But not yet. Not here, at this moment. For now, the island breathes. Night falls over the citadel, and lamps flicker in every window. The sound of the sea grows softer, mingling with the voices of evening. Musicians pluck at lyres, their notes drifting across courtyards. Families gather for bread and wine, for stories and laughter. In the temple, priests light torches, their flames throwing golden light upon the god of the sea, as though Poseidon himself watches over the city. The stars stretch across the heavens, mirrored in the rings of water below. From the highest tower, the city seems like a constellation fallen to earth, each flame a star, each canal a line drawn in the night sky. Sleep settles upon the kingdom, soft as a veil. And as it dreams, so too do we. We dream of the mountains, where rivers sing over stones, feeding the fields of grain. We dream of the forests, where hunters move quietly among deer and boar. We dream of the harbors, where sailors tighten ropes and whisper prayers before dawn. And always, always, we dream of the citadel, where the heart of Atlantis beats steady and strong. This is the island kingdom, not yet lost, not yet judged, but alive. Alive in memory, alive in story, alive in the quiet spaces between sleep and waking. And as you drift further into this dream, let the image of Atlantis settle gently into your thoughts. Rings of land and water, towers rising like flame, the temple gleaming beneath the stars. The Island Kingdom. The heart of a story that has never died. The rise of ambition. Dawn rises over Atlantis. The light comes gently at first, a pale gold spreading across the sea. The waves glimmer like polished glass, and in the stillness of morning the great island seems to hold its breath. Then, slowly, the city awakens. Fires are stoked in kitchens, smoke curling upward from clay chimneys. The sound of hammers on bronze begins again, steady and rhythmic. Merchants roll their carts toward the markets, wheels creaking softly on stone. Fishermen return from the sea, nets heavy with silver-scaled catch. The world stirs, and the pulse of Atlantis grows stronger with every passing moment. Yet with this morning comes not only labor, but a stirring of something deeper, a hunger. For though Atlantis is a land of abundance, wealth, and beauty, its people are restless. The kings look out beyond their harbors, across the endless ocean and the shores of faraway lands, and they wonder what might yet belong to them. It begins, as all ambition does, quietly. The kings meet in the temple of Poseidon, beneath the shadow of the god who gave them life. There, surrounded by walls that shine with orichalcum and gold, they discuss more than laws and oaths. They speak of lands beyond the horizon, of kingdoms less fortunate, of riches waiting to be claimed. The marble floor gleams beneath their sandals, the scent of incense curls in the air, and the bull's blood stains the altar where oaths are sworn. Once, these oaths bound them to justice and restraint. But now, the words begin to shift. Now, they speak of glory. The sea is their road, and they are its masters. Already their ships stretch far and wide. They trade with Egypt, with Libya, with Greece. And so, little by little, ambition spreads across the island like a tide that cannot be stopped. The first signs are small, the training of soldiers in greater numbers, the forging of more weapons, the expansion of shipyards along the harbors. But soon the changes become undeniable. Fleets of warships rise where once only traders sailed. Soldiers march across the plains, their bronze helmets gleaming in the sun, their spears held high. The people cheer them, proud of their strength, proud of their power. For the people of Atlantis, too, feel the stirring of pride. They look upon their cities, their wealth, their temples, and think, we are greater than all the world. The kings fan this pride, for it serves them well. They speak to their people of destiny, of divine favor, of the inheritance of Poseidon. They claim that the god himself wishes them to rule not only the seas, but all the lands beyond. And the people believe. Why should they not? Their lives are filled with abundance. Their streets are lined with marble, their markets overflow with goods, their ships bring treasures from every corner of the earth. Surely such prosperity is a sign of divine blessing. Surely it is proof that the world itself has chosen them to lead. Thus ambition turns into certainty, and certainty turns into action. The fleets of Atlantis sail outward, their prows cutting through the waves. At first, they arrive as allies, offering trade, gifts, and promises of friendship. But soon their tone hardens. Those who resist are subdued. Villages along the coasts are brought under their control. Islands fall into their hands one by one. The Atlantean Empire begins to take shape, not merely an island kingdom, but a force stretching across the seas. The kings gather again in the temple, and this time their oaths are different. They swear not merely to rule with justice, but to expand with strength. They sacrifice bulls upon the altar, their blood running down the channels carved into stone, and they lift their hands to Poseidon as if demanding his approval. And whether the god listens or not, the kings are certain they have his favor. For how else could they rise so swiftly, so powerfully? The rhythm of Atlantis changes. Once, the heart of the island beat in harmony with its fields and forests, its temples and traditions. But now, the beat is quicker, sharper, more urgent. The clang of weapons rings louder than the song of lyres. The shouts of soldiers drown out the laughter of children. Ships of war crowd the harbors, their sails painted with symbols of conquest. Pride swells in the hearts of the people, and with it comes a restless fire that cannot be quenched. Yet ambition is never satisfied. The kings begin to look west, to lands not yet touched by their fleets. They look east, with its ancient temples and fertile rivers. Every direction becomes a temptation, every shore a prize. And so Atlantis begins to move outward like a storm, its reach growing wider, its voice growing louder. But here, at this moment, there is still balance. For though ambition rises, it has not yet consumed. The fields are still golden with grain, the rivers still sing, the temples still shine. The people still laugh in the evenings, still singing beneath the stars. Atlantis has not yet fallen, it is rising, rising higher than ever before. And as it rises, the world begins to notice. Messengers bring word of Atlantean fleets spotted near distant coasts. Traders speak of markets flooded with goods stamped with the mark of Atlantis. Kings in faraway lands whisper of the power growing beyond the pillars of Heracles. Some prepare to resist, others to bow. But all know this, a new force has entered the stage of history, and it is not content to remain on its island throne. Night falls once more over the citadel. The lamps burn bright in the temple of Poseidon, their flames flickering against walls of gold and silver. The kings sit in council, their faces lit by the fire, their voices low but fierce. Outside, the city glows with the same fire, 1,000 torches burning in streets and courtyards, their light reflected in the waters of the canals. The people gather, their voices swelling in songs of pride, their eyes lifted toward the stars. And above them, the stars shine cold and eternal, silent witnesses to the rise of ambition. Atlantis is no longer only an island kingdom. It is an empire in the making. An empire born of pride, of hunger, of the belief that it is destined for more. And though the night is calm, though the waves lap gently against the shore, one cannot help but feel at the stirring of something vast, something unstoppable, something that will carry Atlantis toward both greatness and ruin. For ambition, once awakened, is a fire that burns without end. The empire beyond the sea. The horizon is no longer enough. The people of Atlantis, once content to cultivate their fertile soil and worship their god in peace, now look outward with a hunger that knows no end. The sea, their eternal companion, no longer feels like a boundary but a pathway, a vast open road upon which their destiny unfolds. Their ships, once filled with goods for trade and gifts for alliance, now bristle with spears, shields, and soldiers. The oars beat like the pulse of a war drum, the sails billow with pride, and the Atlantean fleet moves forward as though driven by something greater than mere human will. It begins quietly, as all tides do. Small islands near their coasts fall first. These are not conquests of blood and fire but of intimidation. See the ships crowding the horizon, row upon row of prows shaped like open-mouthed beasts. They hear the distant roar of Atlantean soldiers drilling in unison. They feel the eyes of emissaries upon them, sharp as blades. And so, one by one, the islands submit not because they are conquered, but because they know resistance is futile. The banner of Atlantis spreads, first across the archipelagos, then toward distant coasts. The kings sent their generals westward to the lands of Iberia, northward toward the Green Isles, eastward toward the shores of Greece. In every direction the ships move, carrying not only soldiers but builders, scribes, and merchants. To the conquered they brought roads, markets, temples. To the resistance, they bring fire. And yet, in these early campaigns, Atlantis is not known only for its violence. For each territory they claim, they also improve. Cities once modest are rebuilt in stone and marble. Harbors are deepened to receive great fleets. Temples are raised in honor of Poseidon, columns gleaming with orichalcum, altars heavy with sacrifice. The people of these lands, though under rule, find themselves drawn into the splendor of Atlantean order. And so the empire grows not merely through fear, but also through admiration. The world begins to whisper the name of Atlantis with awe. Merchants from distant lands describe markets overflowing with goods beyond imagining, spices from Egypt, timber from Iberia, metals from the Isles, all flowing into the heart of the empire. Scholars marvel at the records kept on tablets of clay and wax, chronicling not only conquests but knowledge gathered from across the world. Priests speak of the Atlanteans as chosen by the gods, their rising power proof of divine favor. But within Atlantis, pride swells dangerously. The kings, once bound by oaths to rule justly, now meet in the temple of Poseidon with grander visions. Around them the walls glitter with metals mined from mountains, their thrones carved of ivory and bronze, their words heavy with certainty. They speak not of balance, nor of moderation, but of glory. To rule the seas is not enough. To command the isles is not enough. They speak of continents, of empires stretching from one horizon to another. Their ambition grows so vast it seems to eclipse the very gods. And so they send forth their might. Picture, Now, the fleet of Atlantis, hundreds of triremes lined in perfect order, their prows sharp, their sails dyed crimson and blue, their oars moving as one. The sound of them is like thunder rolling across the waves. The sight of them is enough to make kingdoms tremble before a single battle has been fought. Upon these ships ride soldiers in gleaming bronze, their helmets adorned with plumes, their shields polished. They landed first on the coasts of Libya, pressing deeper than trade had ever taken them. Villages fall, cities bend the knee, tribute flows back across the sea. Then they move toward Egypt, their ships crowding the mouth of the Nile like a storm upon the river. Some Egyptian rulers bow in alliance, offering grain and gifts, hoping to temper Atlantean appetite. Others resist, and their resistance is met with fire and bronze. The Nile runs red, and the name of Atlantis is etched into Egyptian memory. From there the fleets turn northward, toward Greece. Here, the resistance is fiercer. For Greece is not one land, but many small, proud cities, each unwilling to submit. The Athenians, the Spartans, the Corinthians each raise their arms, each refuses to bow. The clash between Atlantis and Greece is not merely of armies, but of spirit. Where Atlantis comes with the pride of an empire, Greece responds with the stubborn fire of freedom. It is a contest that will echo for centuries, but at this moment, it only fuels the ambition of the Atlanteans. To conquer Greece, they believe, would be to prove their supremacy beyond doubt. Back in Atlantis, the empire glitters like never before. The harbors groan under the weight of tribute ships. Gold and silver pour into treasuries. Slaves from conquered lands labor in fields and quarries, their backs bent beneath the wealth of the kings. The markets teem with goods from every shore, silks, spices, jewels, carved ivory, wines, oils. Musicians play songs in foreign tongues, dancers move in styles unknown before. The empire becomes not only vast, but dazzling, a crossroads of the world where everything seems to converge. And yet, beneath the splendor, something darker grows. The temples, once places of humble worship, are now stages for grand displays. The kings compete to offer greater sacrifices, slaying bulls by the hundreds, feasting in halls where gold flows like water. The people, once bound by gratitude to their gods, now celebrate their own greatness above all. Where once the voice of Poseidon echoed in their hearts, now it is drowned by the roar of pride. The empire spreads, but with it spreads a corruption unseen. And so, as the fleets return again and again with fresh spoils, as the kings boast of their power and the people cheer their triumphs, a subtle unease lingers beneath the surface. The soil still yields, the rivers still flow, the city still shines, but something essential begins to slip away. Atlantis has become an empire beyond the sea, an empire unmatched, unstoppable, seemingly eternal. But already, in its boundless hunger, it has sown the seeds of its own undoing. For every empire that rises, no matter how vast, carries within it the weight of its fall. The burden of power. The empire of Atlantis stretches across the sea like a net of bronze and fire. Its ships prowl every coast, its merchants fill every harbor, its banners flutter in the winds of foreign lands. From the pillars of Heracles in the west to the fertile Nile in the east, the shadow of Atlantis falls across nations. The kings sit upon their thrones, gazing at maps marked with conquered lands, their voices swelling with pride as they speak of eternity, of greatness, of destiny fulfilled. But empires, like men, do not grow without weight. At first, the burden is subtle. The coffers are full, but the appetite of kings and nobles is bottomless. Tribute flows in, yet demands rise higher. Ships arrive laden with grain, wine, ivory, spices, and gold, but it is never enough. The markets swell with riches, but the palaces consume them faster still. What was once abundance begins to feel, strangely, like scarcity. For every gift of conquest breeds a hunger for more. In the heart of Atlantis, the capital groans beneath the pressure of the empire. The great harbor, once a marvel of balance and beauty, is now so crowded with ships that they jostle like fish in a net, oars clashing, sails tearing in the crush. The warehouses spill over with goods, yet still more ships arrive daily, bringing luxuries no one has time to admire. The markets are clogged, the streets choked, the noise of wealth overwhelming. What was once a proud song of prosperity now sounds like a cacophony of excess. And among the people, a change stirs. Once, the citizens of Atlantis labored with purpose. Farmers tilled their fields with devotion, artisans carved their works with pride, priests offered sacrifices with humility. But as conquest swelled the city with slaves, tribute, and plunder, the people began to lose their way. Farmers abandoned their plows, hiring servants from conquered lands to work in their place. Craftsmen ceased to create, for foreign goods flood the markets cheaper and faster than their own. Priests, once solemn, now oversee sacrifices that are more spectacle than worship, feasts where bulls are slaughtered not for devotion, but for show. The common man, too, feels the burden. He stands in a city more crowded than ever before, surrounded by faces from every corner of the empire, slaves brought in chains, merchants shouting in strange tongues, soldiers returning from distant campaigns. The streets once filled with familiar neighbors now seethe with a restless mixture of peoples, each with their own customs, their own hungers, their own grievances. The harmony that once defined Atlantis begins to fray. Arguments spill into brawls, brawls into riots. The kings send guards to keep order, but even their presence cannot soothe the unease that seeps into every corner. Meanwhile, the nobility grow fat with spoils. Their villas expand outward, swallowing fields and orchards to make room for new gardens, fountains, halls, and baths. They dine on delicacies from across the world, honeyed wines from Greece, figs from Carthage, rare spices from the Far East. Musicians play in endless rotation, dancers swirl in silks dyed in colors once reserved for gods. Yet beneath all their luxury, the nobles are restless. For with power comes rivalry. Each family measures itself against the others, each seeks to build a temple grander, a villa larger, a feast more extravagant. Their competition feeds vanity, their vanity feeds resentment, and soon even among the kings themselves, unity begins to weaken. The burden of power falls most heavily on the soldiers. They have become the lifeblood of Atlantis, the edge of its empire. Each year they march farther, each year they leave behind homes, families, and friends to fight in foreign lands. At first they returned as heroes, paraded through the streets, showered with garlands. But as the years stretch on, they come back scarred, weary, hollow-eyed. The cheers grow fainter, the honors fewer. To the kings, they are no longer heroes, but tools replaceable, endless, expected. And when some return maimed or broken, they are cast aside, left to beg in the very streets they once defended. Bitterness grows. Among the soldiers, whispers spread of exhaustion, of betrayal, of loyalty strained thin. Among the conquered peoples, resentment simmers, taxes rise, tributes grow heavier, sons are pressed into service for wars not their own. And within Atlantis itself, the old virtues seem forgotten. Even the earth begins to echo this strain. The fields, once the pride of Atlantis, grow tired beneath constant demand. Year after year they are pressed to yield more grain, more olives, more fruit to feed the swelling population and the armies abroad. But soil, too, has limits. Harvests falter, and when drought touches the land, the cracks in the earth feel like cracks in the empire itself. Rivers run lower, and whispers spread that the gods no longer smile upon Atlantis. The priests, once the guardians of balance, grow uneasy. In the sacred temple of Poseidon, the fires burn lower, the offerings seem hollow. The priests warn the kings, humility is required, devotion must be renewed. But the kings laugh, their voices echoing in halls glittering with gold. Why should we bow, when all the world bows to us, they ask. Why offer more to the gods, when it is clear the gods favor us already? Their arrogance drowns out the warnings. And so, in the stillness of night, the burden grows heavier. Atlantis, the shining empire, now staggers under the weight of its own triumph. Wealth has become excess. Power has, yet the people, blinded by glitter and noise, cannot see it. They cheer their kings, they fill their markets, they feast in their halls. They tell themselves the empire is eternal. They tell themselves the sea itself belongs to them. They tell themselves they are chosen, invincible, forever. But beneath the marble streets, the foundation trembles. And in the hush of the waves, the voice of Poseidon waits, patient, silent, watching. For the burden of power is not simply weight, it is also a warning. And Atlantis, though mighty, has begun to forget that all empires rise not only on strength, but on balance. A balance now tipping, dangerously, toward the abyss. The cracks in the foundation. The empire of Atlantis gleams still, but the shine is no longer pure. Beneath the glittering palaces and bustling harbors, hairline fractures begin to snake across the foundations of power. At first, they are invisible thin lines, hidden beneath marble and gold, masked by festivals and victories. But with each passing season, those cracks widen, until even the proudest citizen can feel the tremor of unease beneath their feet. Corruption does not arrive like a storm. It seeps in, slowly, quietly, like water into stone. It begins in the courts of the kings, where once noble counselors sat in solemn judgment. Now bribes slip into eager hands, decisions swayed not by justice, but by coin. A merchant accused of cheating his workers pays a gift of gold to a magistrate, and the charges vanish. A nobleman guilty of cruelty offers a villa's worth of silver, and his crimes are buried in silence. The laws of Atlantis, once the pride of the empire, begin to bend under the weight of wealth. Soon, even the priests feel the pull. The temples, once solemn places of balance and devotion, grow swollen with offerings meant not for the gods, but for influence. Citizens bring statues, jewels, silks, and coins, hoping not for divine favor, but for political advantage. Priests, once humble servants of Poseidon, now walk in robes heavier than kings, feasting in halls meant for prayer. Their voices, once sharp with warnings, soften into flattery, telling the rulers only what they wish to hear, that Atlantis is eternal, that no storm can touch it, that the gods themselves kneel before the empire's glory. But the gods are not fooled, and neither is the earth. The cracks spread outward, into the streets and markets. Here, greed festers. Merchants who once traded fairly now adulterate their wares with fraud, grain mixed with sand, wine watered thin, metals gilded but hollow within. Prices rise for the poor, while luxuries pour endlessly into the hands of the wealthy. Families once secure find themselves teetering on hunger, while nobles waste entire harvests on banquets. Anger begins to smolder, though few dare speak it aloud. Slavery grows like the conquests of Atlantis fill the city with captives, men, women, and children taken from distant shores. At first they were a rarity, a sign of wealth, a handful of hands in the fields or kitchens. But now, they are everywhere. They row the ships, they till the land, they build the villas. Citizens grow lazy, giving their burdens to the enslaved, until entire crafts and traditions of Atlantis begin to fade. The farmer forgets the rhythm of the soil. The craftsman abandons the hammer. The warrior no longer trains, trusting mercenaries to fight in his stead. The strength of Atlantis, once forged in labor and discipline, begins to wither in the comfort of reliance. And still the kings demand more. Taxes rise higher each year to fund their wars, their palaces, their endless hunger for monuments. New statues, taller and grander than the last, are raised in the capital, each proclaiming the glory of Atlantis. New temples rise, gilded with foreign gold, their spires piercing the sky. But as the city grows upward in splendor, its foundations grow weaker. Aqueducts crack under the strain of new districts. Roads crumble under the weight of endless processions. Sewers overflow, fouling the very air. Yet the kings do not see it. Their eyes are fixed only upward, toward the glory they imagine eternal. Meanwhile, the soldiers once the iron backbone of Atlantis begin to rot from within. Weary from endless campaigns, they return home not with honor, but with bitterness. Many are maimed, forgotten, or discarded, left to beg in the same streets they once defended. Others, drunk on plunder, swagger arrogantly through the city, their blades at their sides, their discipline lost. Mercenaries from foreign lands fill the ranks, loyal not to Atlantis, but to coin. The once proud army that carried the empire's banners now looks more like a rabble of hirelings, dangerous not only to enemies, but to Atlantis itself. The people whisper. They whisper of injustices that go unpunished, of nobles who bleed the poor dry, of priests who no longer fear the gods. They whisper of storms and earthquakes, of strange signs in the sky omens that the gods are displeased. They whisper of famine, of fields that yield less each year, of rivers running low, of seas growing restless. They whisper of Poseidon's wrath, though in public they smile and cheer at festivals, afraid to speak the truth aloud. And yet, there are moments when the cracks show plainly, undeniable even to those who try to ignore them. A drought strikes, and the cisterns run low. The poor line up for water, waiting hours for a single jug, while nobles fill their fountains with wine. Anger flares into riots, soldiers sent to beat back their own citizens. The cries echo in the streets long after the blood has dried. A feast is held in the palace, while famine grips the countryside. Thousands starve, while the kings dine on dishes brought from across the sea. Outside the palace gates, hungry citizens gather, watching through iron bars as music and laughter spill into the night. Resentment hardens in their hearts, resentment that no banishment of guards or proclamation of kings can silence. And deep beneath the city, the earth stirs. The island trembles with subtle quakes, so small at first they are dismissed as nothing. But as seasons pass, they grow stronger. Statues topple, walls crack, fountains shudder. Some claim it is the shifting of the sea floor. Others claim it is the gods' anger. But all who feel it know one truth: Atlantis is not as unshakable as its kings claim. Still, arrogance blinds the rulers. When priests warn of Poseidon's wrath, they laugh and demand greater sacrifices, not in humility, but in spectacle. When citizens protest rising taxes, the kings silence them with festivals, fireworks, and games meant to dazzle the eye and dull the mind. When cracks appear in temples, they build them higher, layering gold over stone until the weakness is hidden. When soldiers grumble, they are sent to new wars, more conquest to distract from unrest at home. But no conquest can hide the truth forever. Atlantis stands, still proud, still glittering. But beneath its marble skin, the rot grows. Its laws are for sale. Its priests were corrupted. Its citizens softened. Its soldiers fractured. Its soil is weary. Its seas restless. And the cracks, once invisible, now spread openly across the empire. Some see them, and tremble. Some see them, and look away. But the gods see them, and they do not forget. For every empire that rises on arrogance will one day be tested. And Atlantis, though it does not yet know it, is already being tested. The cracks in the foundation are no longer warnings. They are promises. And promises, once made, are always fulfilled. Whispers of doom. The air of Atlantis grows heavy, though few dare to name it. It is a weight that presses on the heart, a shadow that lengthens across marble courtyards and golden halls. The empire still gleams, the streets still bustle, the temples still rise, but beneath the surface there is a sense and unease that something vast and terrible has begun to stir. The people feel it, though they cloak it in silence. The priests feel it, though they drown it in ritual. Even the kings, for all their arrogance, cannot ignore it forever. For doom whispers, not in thunder, but in murmurs, and those murmurs have begun to echo through the island kingdom. The whispers first take root in prophecy. In the hills beyond the capital, a temple long forgotten awakens with voices. An old seeress, blind from birth, rises in the night and declares that Poseidon no longer smiles upon Atlantis. Rulers laugh, dismissing her as a madwoman, but the people listen. And in their hearts, the warning lodges like a splinter. In the capital's grand temple, even the high priests cannot suppress their unease. During a sacred ceremony, the statue of Poseidon taller than any man, carved of solid jade shudders upon its pedestal. The floor beneath it cracks, a line splitting the tiles as if the earth itself has spoken. Gasps ripple through the crowd. The priests hastily declare it a sign of the god's strength, a blessing. Yet in private chambers, their hands tremble. For never before had the sacred image moved, and never before had stone cracked within holy ground. The whispers grow in the marketplace. Sailors returning from distant journeys speak of strange omens at sea. The waters churned without wind, they say. The stars shifted, constellations no longer where they should be. Birds flew in strange patterns, wheeling in frantic circles before vanishing into the horizon. Some claim they saw islands swallowed in waves, whole villages vanished in a single night. These tales are told over cups of wine, laughed off by the wealthy as sailors' madness, but the common folk do not laugh. They listen, and fear settles deep into their bones. Unrest begins to smolder. The poor, burdened by taxes and hunger, whisper that the gods punish Atlantis for its cruelty. Slaves, countless and weary, whisper that the empire is cursed for the chains it binds around men. Farmers whisper that the soil no longer yields because it rejects the greed of the kings. And in every whisper, whether spoken by peasant or noble, one word repeats, doom. It is carried in alleyways, in taverns, in temples, in the corners of banquets. No decree can silence it. No festival can drown it. The whispers spread faster than fire, and though invisible, they are more dangerous than any army. The natural world itself seems to join the chorus. The sea grows restless. Waves crash higher against the harbors, tides surging beyond their marks. Fishermen vanish, their boats found splintered on distant shores. Dolphins once playful near the coasts now flee to deeper waters. The ocean, once the empire's greatest ally, begins to feel like an enemy. The earth too begins to groan. Tremors ripple through the island, faint but constant. Statues topple, walls lean, fountains run dry. Entire neighborhoods hear the rumble beneath their feet, as if a giant stirs in the deep. Some shrug it off, but others whisper of a truth too dangerous to ignore, that the very foundation of Atlantis trembles, and that one day, it will not stop. And then, the sky begins to betray them. Strange lights flare upon the horizon, flickering in colors no fire should hold. Comets streak across the heavens, their trails burning long into the night. The stars seem to shift, force, lightning lashing across the sea in endless arcs. It is as though the cosmos itself conspires to remind Atlantis that it is not eternal. The rulers, proud and defiant, cannot help but feel the unease. Yet rather than bow to humility, they turn to defiance. The kings demand greater sacrifices, slaughtering herds of oxen and building altars of gold. The priests proclaim louder, their voices strained, declaring that Atlantis is still favored, that the empire is eternal, that the gods will never abandon them. But the louder they shout, the hollower their words sound. Even the children know it. Even the slaves, beaten into silence, can see it in the eyes of their masters, fear. And fear has its own momentum. Rebellions break out in the outer provinces. Conquered peoples, emboldened by the weakness they sense, begin to resist. Armies are sent to crush them, but the soldiers fight half-heartedly, their loyalty fraying, their discipline cracked. For why fight for an empire cursed by its gods? Why bleed for kings who gorge themselves on feasts while their soldiers starve? Each rebellion is put down, but each costs more than it yields, draining Atlantis of its strength. Within the capital, unrest grows sharper. Crowds gather outside the temples, demanding answers, demanding signs that Atlantis is not doomed. When none are given, riots break out. Statues of kings are toppled. Noble estates are looted. Soldiers are forced to turn their swords not on enemies abroad, but on their own people. The streets that once sang with festivals now run with blood. And still, the whispers grow. Whispers that the empire has angered Poseidon himself, the very god who raised Atlantis from the sea. Whispers that the earthquakes are his fury, that the waves are his warnings, that the stars themselves burn with his judgment. Whispers that Atlantis, for all its pride and wealth, is nothing more than dust waiting to be swept into the ocean. In the silence of night, when the city sleeps uneasily, the whispers gather in dreams. Citizens wake in terror, claiming visions of towering waves swallowing the city, of fire boiling through the streets, of statues collapsing into rubble. Some dream of ships fleeing into endless darkness, never reaching land. Others dream of the island cracking apart, swallowed whole into the sea. Each vision is different, yet all bound by the same thread, the end. The whispers are now everywhere. They slip into palaces, into markets, into fields, into barracks. They are the hush in the corners of banquets, the murmur behind closed doors, the chant of slaves in the shadows. Atlantis, the eternal empire, feels the weight of prophecy, unrest, and nature itself closing in. Its people no longer ask if doom will come. They ask only when. And though the kings still deny it, though the priests still mask it, though the walls still, the empire trembles not from enemies without, but from forces far greater, forces no army can resist, no bribe can silence, no monument can withstand. Atlantis stands upon the edge of its fate. And the whispers of doom are no longer whispers. They are a chorus. They are a tide. They are the future, pressing against the present like a storm against the shore. Soon, they will no longer be prophecies. They will be reality. The wrath of the gods. The storm begins not with thunder, but with silence. A stillness falls over Atlantis, a silence so vast that it seems even the waves have ceased their eternal rhythm. The sky glows an uncanny hue, neither day nor night, as if the heavens themselves hesitate. Farmers glance upward, hands frozen upon their plows. Sailors stand at the edge of the harbors, nets hanging loose. Children stop their games, wide-eyed, for something in the air tells them that the world itself holds its breath. And then, the silence breaks. The earth shudders with a roar that shakes temples to their foundations. Mountains rumble, tearing fissures across the land. Cobblestones split open, fountains burst, and marble statues topple into shards. The people scream as the ground beneath them shifts like a living beast, throwing men and women to the dust. From the hills, rocks cascade in thunderous avalanches. From the sea cliffs, chunks of earth tear away, vanishing into the depths below. The trembling does not end, it grows, rolling in waves across the entire island, as though the bones of the earth themselves are breaking. The sea follows. A low, monstrous groan echoes from the horizon, and then the ocean withdraws. The tide pulls back farther and farther, exposing seabeds, leaving ships stranded upon sand. Fish writhe helplessly in the muck. Children, in their innocence, chase after them, only to be dragged back by parents who know, instinctively, the truth: this is not retreat, but gathering. For no sooner has the ocean emptied than it returns an unstoppable wall of water, rising higher than the tallest temples, cresting like a moving mountain. The people stand frozen, their cries swallowed by the roar of the wave. It crashes upon Atlantis with fury. Houses vanish in an instant, swept into the churning abyss. Ships shatter like twigs, hurled against stone harbors. Bridges snap, towers crumble, entire neighborhoods disappear beneath the flood. Screams fill the air, rising above the thunder of water, as thousands are carried away in an instant, swallowed whole by the wrath of the sea. Streets that once rang with music and trade become rivers of ruin, their currents carrying both noble and slave alike toward the depths. But the sea is not the only enemy. The mountains split open, and from their wounds bursts fire. Rivers of molten stone pour into valleys, consuming farms, forests, and villages. Smoke billows into the Sky, blotting out the sun, turning day into night. Ash rains down upon the capital, coating its marble palaces in a shroud of gray. Temples burn, their wooden roofs collapsing into flames. The air grows thick and choking, every breath searing the lungs. The people stumble blindly through the darkness, searching for safety, yet finding only chaos. In the grand temple of Poseidon, the priests gather, desperate. Clad in their ceremonial robes, they raise their arms in frantic prayer, chanting louder and louder as the tremors shake the very walls. The great statue of the god, the pride of the empire, shivers violently, and then collapses, shattering into countless pieces across the marble floor. The priests wail, their faith broken, as dust and smoke swallow their sacred hall. For now, it is undeniable, the god who raised Atlantis has turned against it. The palaces of the kings fare no better. Gold-lined halls crumble, jewels scatter into the dust, and silken banners ignite in flame. The rulers, once so proud, once so untouchable, are reduced to frightened men clutching at trembling walls. Guards abandon their posts, nobles flee into the streets, their fine robes trailing through mud and blood. The kings, who believed their empire eternal, now watch helplessly as their legacy is torn apart before their eyes. Their shouts for order, their commands for rescue, are drowned by the fury of earth and sea. No crown, no army, no treasure can shield them now. And the people, the countless lives that built this empire, are left with only terror. Families clutch one another as floods crash through their homes. Mothers cry out for children lost in the waves. Fathers claw at rubble, searching for loved ones buried beneath stone. Slaves and masters, soldiers and merchants, rich and poor, all distinctions vanish in the face of destruction. All are equal now, equal in fear, equal in despair, equal in doom. The destruction does not come in a single moment, but in waves. The earth shakes again and again, splitting the island into fragments. Streets collapse into yawning chasms. Rivers change course, sweeping through neighborhoods like serpents. The sea crashes in again and again, each wave higher, more merciless than the last. Fire spreads unchecked, consuming whatever the waters do not claim. The city, once a jewel of marble and gold, becomes a battlefield of elements: earth, water, fire, and air, all turned against mankind in a single, united wrath. The sky itself joins in the fury. Lightning tears across the heavens in endless arcs, striking towers and palaces until they burst into flame. Thunder shakes the very air, a drumbeat of the gods' anger. The clouds swirl into monstrous tempests, their winds tearing roofs from houses, their rain lashing against the ruins. It is no longer a storm, no longer an earthquake, no longer a flood. It is everything at once. It is the apocalypse. And yet, through the chaos, a terrible clarity emerges. The people remember the whispers, the prophecies, the dreams. They recall the warnings ignored, the omens dismissed, the hubris of kings who believed themselves above fate. Now, in the roar of waves and the crack of fire, they understand, this is not chance. This is judgment. Atlantis, for all its glory, for all its power, for all its pride, has been cast down. The gods have spoken, and their verdict is final. One by one, the wonders of Atlantis vanish. The great harbor, once filled with ships, disappears beneath the waves. The towering walls crumble into rubble. The aqueducts, which carried water across the land, collapsed into heaps of stone. The gardens, the palaces, the temples, all swallowed, all erased. The empire that once stretched across seas is reduced to fragments of ruin, vanishing into the depths. And at last, the island itself begins to sink. The earth convulses in a final, shattering quake. Cracks split across the land, widening into abysses. Entire districts slide into the sea, their lights extinguished as they vanish into the black. Survivors cling to rooftops, to rafts, to one another, but the waters rise inexorably. The fires hiss and die as the flood consumes them. The mountains crumble, their peaks collapsing into the ocean. And then, with a roar like the ending of the world, the sea closes over the last of the land. Atlantis is gone. The waves roll outward, carrying fragments of stone, splinters of wood, whispers of memory. Smoke lingers upon the horizon, and then even that fades, leaving only the endless sea. The empire that believed itself eternal is erased in a single night, reduced to myth. No trace remains, save for the stories, carried by those few who escaped, sailors who drift ashore on distant lands, their eyes haunted, their words trembling as they speak of the city that fell. The wrath of the gods is complete. Atlantis, the jewel of the world, the empire of marble and gold, lies buried forever beneath the waves. Its towers are reefs, its streets are seabeds, its palaces are shadows in the deep. Where once laughter and music filled the air, now only silence reigns. Where once ambition and pride drove kings to conquest, now only the ocean guards their secrets. And yet, though the city is gone, its story endures. For whispers do not die with stone and fire. They linger in memory, in legend, in the fears and hopes of generations. The story of Atlantis becomes more than a tale of doom, it becomes a warning, a reminder of hubris punished, of empires undone, of the wrath of the gods. Sailors tell it as they cross stormy seas. Priests tell it as they warn kings against pride. Parents tell it to their children, so that they may learn humility before the powers of the earth and sky. Atlantis has fallen, but its voice carries on, echoing through time, the wrath of the gods has claimed the island, but not the memory. And so, even as the waves close over its ruins, Atlantis rises again, not in stone, but in story, not in marble, but in myth. And in that myth, it becomes eternal. Echoes beneath the waves. The sea is calm now. The thunder has faded. The fire has died. Where once towers gleamed, where once harbors thrived, there is only the ocean. The horizon stretches unbroken, silent, indifferent. Atlantis, in all its power and pride, lies buried beneath the waves, hidden from mortal eyes. Yet though the land is gone, the memory clings, refusing to sink. For from ruin, stories are born, and from silence, whispers rise that echo through ages. In the days that follow the cataclysm, a few survivors drift upon the sea. They are sailors who clung to broken timbers, merchants swept away by waves, peasants carried upon floating debris. Their eyes are hollow, their voices hoarse, their minds scarred by visions no words can truly hold. They land upon distant shores, staggering into villages of strangers who gather to listen. And as they speak of mountains breaking, of fire and flood, of an empire swallowed whole, the world shudders with disbelief and wonder. At first, their stories are dismissed as madness. How could an island so vast, a city so great, vanish in a single night? Yet as the tales spread, they begin to take root. The sailors of Crete speak of a thunder so loud it deafened the birds in the sky. Fishermen of Egypt recall the sea rising higher than the pyramids. Shepherds of Iberia whisper of an orange glow upon the western horizon, as if the sun itself had drowned. One by one, fragments of testimony weave into a tapestry of truth, a tale that will not fade. The survivors themselves change as they wander. Some become prophets, carrying their tragedy like a sacred burden. They speak in marketplaces, in taverns, in temples, warning kings and priests alike of the wrath of the gods. Do not build too high, they cry. Do not grow too proud. For the sea remembers, and the gods do not forgive. Others fall silent, retreating from the world, unable to bear the weight of memory. They live out their lives in shadows, haunted by dreams of waves and fire, seeing Atlantis collapse again each night in their sleep. Their silence, too, becomes legend, for those who will not speak are often thought to guard the greatest truths. Time passes, and the story grows. Across the Mediterranean, whispers of Atlantis drift from shore to shore. In Greece, philosophers ponder the tale, wondering if it is history or allegory. In Egypt, priests preserve fragments of memory in their scrolls, weaving the fall of Atlantis into hymns of warning. In Iberia, Bards sing of a kingdom beyond the western seas, a land of gold and marble, lost forever to the wrath of the ocean. Traders carry these stories as surely as they carry spices and silks, ensuring that Atlantis lives. The wrath of the gods has claimed the island, but not the memory. And so, even as the waves close over its ruins, Atlantis rises again not in stone, but in story, not in marble, but in myth. And in that myth, it becomes eternal. Echoes beneath the waves. The sea is calm now. The thunder has faded. The fire has died. Where once towers gleamed, where once harbors thrived, there is only the ocean. The horizon stretches unbroken, silent, indifferent. Atlantis, in all its power and pride, lies buried beneath the waves, hidden from mortal eyes. Yet though the land is gone, the memory clings, refusing to sink. For from ruin, stories are born, and from silence, whispers rise that echo through ages. In the days that follow the cataclysm, a few survivors drift upon the sea. They are sailors who clung to broken timbers, merchants swept away by waves, peasants carried upon floating debris. Their eyes are hollow, their voices hoarse, their minds scarred by visions no words can truly hold. They land upon distant shores, staggering into villages of strangers who gather to listen. And as they speak of mountains breaking, of fire and flood, of an empire swallowed whole, the world shudders with disbelief and wonder. At first, their stories are dismissed as madness. How could an island so vast, a city so great, vanish in a single night? Yet as the tales spread, they begin to take root. The sailors of Crete speak of a thunder so loud it deafened the birds in the sky. Fishermen of Egypt recall the sea rising higher than the pyramids. Shepherds of Iberia whisper of an orange glow upon the western horizon, as if the sun itself had drowned. One by one, fragments of testimony weave into a tapestry of truth, a tale that will not fade. The survivors themselves change as they wander. Some become prophets, carrying their tragedy like a sacred burden. They speak in marketplaces, in taverns, in temples, warning kings and priests alike of the wrath of the gods. Do not build too high, they cry. Do not grow too proud. For the sea remembers, and the gods do not forgive. Others fall silent, retreating from the world, unable to bear the weight of memory. They live out their lives in shadows, haunted by dreams of waves and fire, seeing Atlantis collapse again each night in their sleep. Their silence, too, becomes legend, for those who will not speak are often thought to guard the greatest truths. Time passes, and the story grows. Across the Mediterranean, whispers of Atlantis drift from shore to shore. In Greece, philosophers ponder the tale, wondering if it is history or allegory. In Egypt, priests preserve fragments of memory. The wrath of the gods has claimed the island, but not the memory. And so, even as the waves close over its ruins, Atlantis rises again not in stone, but in story, not in marble, but in myth. And in that myth, it becomes eternal. Echoes beneath the waves. The sea is calm now. The thunder has faded. The fire has died. Where once towers gleamed, where once harbors thrived, there is only the ocean. The horizon stretches unbroken, silent, indifferent. Atlantis, in all its power and pride, lies buried beneath the waves, hidden from mortal eyes. Yet though the land is gone, the memory clings, refusing to sink. For from ruin, stories are born, and from silence, whispers rise that echo through ages. In the days that follow the cataclysm, a few survivors drift upon the sea. They are sailors who clung to broken timbers, merchants swept away by waves, peasants carried upon floating debris. Their eyes are hollow, their voices hoarse, their minds scarred by visions no words can truly hold. They land upon distant shores, staggering into villages of strangers who gather to listen. And as they speak of mountains breaking, of fire and flood, of an empire swallowed whole, the world shudders with disbelief and wonder. At first, their stories are dismissed as madness. How could an island so vast, a city so great, vanish in a single night? Yet as the tales spread, they begin to take root. The sailors of Crete speak of a thunder so loud it deafened the birds in the sky. Fishermen of Egypt recall the sea rising higher than the pyramids. Shepherds of Iberia whisper of an orange glow upon the western horizon, as if the sun itself had drowned. One by one, fragments of testimony weave into a tapestry of truth, a tale that will not fade. The survivors themselves change as they wander. Some become prophets, carrying their tragedy like a sacred burden. They speak in marketplaces, in taverns, in temples, warning kings and priests alike of the wrath of the gods. Do not build too high, they cry. Do not grow too proud. For the sea remembers, and the gods do not forgive. Others fall silent, retreating from the world, unable to bear the weight of memory. They live out their lives in shadows, haunted by dreams of waves and fire, seeing Atlantis collapse again each night in their sleep. Their silence, too, becomes legend, for those who will not speak are often thought to guard the greatest truths. Time passes, and the story grows. Across the Mediterranean, whispers of Atlantis drift from shore to shore. In Greece, philosophers ponder the tale, wondering if it is history or allegory. In Egypt, priests preserve fragments of memory in their scrolls, weaving the fall of Atlantis into hymns of warning. In Iberia, bards sing of a kingdom beyond the western seas, a land of gold and marble, lost forever to the wrath of the ocean. Traders carry these stories as surely as they carry spices. The wrath of the gods has claimed the island, but not the memory. And so, even as the waves close over its ruins, Atlantis rises again not in stone, but in story, not in marble, but in myth. And in that myth, it becomes eternal. Echoes beneath the waves. The sea is calm now. The thunder has faded. The fire has died. Where once towers gleamed, where once harbors thrived, there is only the ocean. The horizon stretches unbroken, silent, indifferent. Atlantis, in all its power and pride, lies buried beneath the waves, hidden from mortal eyes. Yet though the land is gone, the memory clings, refusing to sink. For from ruin, stories are born, and from silence, whispers rise that echo through ages. In the days that follow the cataclysm, a few survivors drift upon the sea. They are sailors who clung to broken timbers, merchants swept away by waves, peasants carried upon floating debris. Their eyes are hollow, their voices hoarse, their minds scarred by visions no words can truly hold. They land upon distant shores, staggering into villages of strangers who gather to listen. And as they speak of mountains breaking, of fire and flood, of an empire swallowed whole, the world shudders with disbelief and wonder. At first, their stories are dismissed as madness. How could an island so vast, a city so great, vanish in a single night? Yet as the tales spread, they begin to take root. The sailors of Crete speak of a thunder so loud it deafened the birds in the sky. Fishermen of Egypt recall the sea rising higher than the pyramids. Shepherds of Iberia whisper of an orange glow upon the western horizon, as if the sun itself had drowned. One by one, fragments of testimony weave into a tapestry of truth, a tale that will not fade. The survivors themselves change as they wander. Some become prophets, carrying their tragedy like a sacred burden. They speak in marketplaces, in taverns, in temples, warning kings and priests alike of the wrath of the gods. Do not build too high, they cry. Do not grow too proud. For the sea remembers, and the gods do not forgive. Others fall silent, retreating from the world, unable to bear the weight of memory. They live out their lives in shadows, haunted by dreams of waves and fire, seeing Atlantis collapse again each night in their sleep. Their silence, too, becomes legend, for those who will not speak are often thought to guard the greatest truths. Time passes, and the story grows. Across the Mediterranean, whispers of Atlantis drift from shore to shore. In Greece, philosophers ponder the tale, wondering if it is history or allegory. In Egypt, priests preserve fragments of memory in their scrolls, weaving the fall of Atlantis into hymns of warning. In Iberia, bards sing of a kingdom beyond the western seas, a land of gold and marble, lost forever to the wrath of the ocean. Traders carry these stories. The wrath of the gods has claimed the island, but not the memory. And so, even as the waves close over its ruins, Atlantis rises again not in stone, but in story, not in marble, but in myth. And in that myth, it becomes eternal. Echoes beneath the waves. The sea is calm now. The thunder has faded. The fire has died. Where once towers gleamed, where once harbors thrived, there is only the ocean. The horizon stretches unbroken, silent, indifferent. Atlantis, in all its power and pride, lies buried beneath the waves, hidden from mortal eyes. Yet though the land is gone, the memory clings, refusing to sink. For from ruin, stories are born, and from silence, whispers rise that echo through ages. In the days that follow the cataclysm, a few survivors drift upon the sea. They are sailors who clung to broken timbers, merchants swept away by waves, peasants carried upon floating debris. Their eyes are hollow, their voices hoarse, their minds scarred by visions no words can truly hold. They land upon distant shores, staggering into villages of strangers who gather to listen. And as they speak of mountains breaking, of fire and flood, of an empire swallowed whole, the world shudders with disbelief and wonder. At first, their stories are dismissed as madness. How could an island so vast, a city so great, vanish in a single night? Yet as the tales spread, they begin to take root. The sailors of Crete speak of a thunder so loud it deafened the birds in the sky. Fishermen of Egypt recall the sea rising higher than the pyramids. Shepherds of Iberia whisper of an orange glow upon the western horizon, as if the sun itself had drowned. One by one, fragments of testimony weave into a tapestry of truth, a tale that will not fade. The survivors themselves change as they wander. Some become prophets, carrying their tragedy like a sacred burden. They speak in marketplaces, in taverns, in temples, warning kings and priests alike of the wrath of the gods. Do not build too high, they cry. Do not grow too proud. For the sea remembers, and the gods do not forgive. Others fall silent, retreating from the world, unable to bear the weight of memory. They live out their lives in shadows, haunted by dreams of waves and fire, seeing Atlantis collapse again each night in their sleep. Their silence, too, becomes legend, for those who will not speak are often thought to guard the greatest truths. Time passes, and the story grows. Across the Mediterranean, whispers of Atlantis drift from shore to shore. In Greece, philosophers ponder the tale, wondering if it is history or allegory. In Egypt, priests preserve fragments of memory in their scrolls, weaving the fall of Atlantis into hymns of warning. In Iberia, bards sing of a